Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're talking with Drew. He is a software engineer at Amazon Web Services. I learned a lot about what it's like to work at Amazon Web Services. I knew that it was a pretty good gig, like nice work if you can get it, but I didn't know some of the details about it. And specifically, I was thinking Amazon Web Services must be like really low level coding, super nerds, and he kind of helped me figure out and work through some of that. I hope you enjoy the conversation. As always, share this video, like and subscribe, and come back again next week for the next one. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Drew Jex. I'm a software engineer. I work for Amazon, specifically Amazon Web Services, that part of Amazon. Um, and I'm also mostly working on the front end, meaning the website, the web page for the budgets console, which is part of a small section of AWS, Amazon Web Services. So I do web programming. That's kind of my specialty, but it's in the software development engineer job group, um, and it's great. I enjoy it a lot. I've kind of uh, I definitely enjoy the front end, the web development part of software engineering. Um, there's a lot of very skilled backend engineers, but I learned earlier on that I like the visual part, especially. So I've kind of steered my career in that direction, and found myself at AWS, which is a great place to be at. Very exciting. A lot of cutting edge stuff going on there. Um, and I guess I should add I work on the budgets console, so it's kind of like cost management space, which is obviously a big deal for cloud computing. People are trying to cut their costs all the time and make sure they're staying within budget. So yeah, it feels pretty secure. It's a big
Okay,
deal.
great. So give us the short explanation. I'm only partially familiar with what Amazon Web Services even is. I know it's kind of like in the background of a lot of things that I use normally just in my day-to-day consumer life. But tell us what is Amazon Web Services actually?
Yeah,
And I guess right here is probably a good time to point out we know that you're not acting as a spokesperson for Amazon. This is just an interview between friends.
yes.
This you're not like
Glad you said that. That
representing
is,
them,
yeah.
right? That should be clear for all of these interviews, but I like to just point it out to be sure
Yeah,
anyway. But yes,
thank
okay,
you.
go ahead. What is Amazon Web Services anyway?
Yeah. So Amazon Web Services, it's obviously owned by Amazon. It's cloud computing. It basically started as um, where Amazon back in like 2007, 2008 was trying to grow their business and make sure that their website Amazon.com was easily accessible and highly available all across the world in different areas. And so they started building all these data centers, and eventually realized that they could actually like make this a business where instead of companies having to have their data centers on site and kind of manage it themselves, Amazon would basically lend out a portion of their own computing to businesses that allow them to run their software, their websites, their whatever they're doing, um, on Amazon's hardware. And it kind of started that way, and it grew from there. So there's a bunch of things you can do now. There's uh, database databases that they offer. They're obviously you can build websites with them. You can do all sorts of computing, serverless computing. There's EC2, which is where you can. It's basically you can kind of manage your own servers, and you can manage security that's associated with those things. There's a bazillion services they have that they offer now, and basically I'd say a good portion of the internet, when you access the internet, a good portion of it runs on AWS. So it's grown quite a bit since its beginning.
This has the potential to become a really nerdy kind of conversation about all of the details about how this works. I am not a software developer. In my current job as a data scientist, I write some Python code and I use heavily rely on the generative AI tools to do it fast, right? Um, in you, so you said you're kind of looking at like one specific page of the user facing website. Is that right? So you're working on this page that is mostly about budgeting. Is that what you
Yes,
said?
exactly. Hmm.
Okay. And so in your job as a developer, does that mean I mean, I guess first question, what languages are you coding in? And then also, what kind of projects do you work on? Is this on a big team, on one web page? How does that all work?
Yep, good question. Um, so yes, it's I guess we call it a web page. That makes it probably sound more simplistic than it is. But it's basically so that there's budgets console which has several pages within it.
Okay.
And there's a couple other consoles actually that we manage as well. Pricing calculator is one. Uh, Cost anomaly detection. So there's a couple different individual web pages that are all part of obviously the bigger AWS console. So most of it, most of my job is done programming in TypeScript, React. I'd say those are probably the two main languages that I use. Uh, at Amazon specifically, because but there's no DevOps team to like manage the infrastructure of your website. As software engineers, we kind of take ownership of everything, and so I've actually done quite a bit of like infrastructure management. I've done quite a bit of Java as well, like helping some of our backend systems or some of our systems that help with our website as well. So a variety of different languages and tools. I'd say it's definitely the most diverse set of tooling and languages that I've ever used at a computer or a software engineer job before. Um, yeah.
Okay. So in a given workday, you say you like your job. When I think of a software engineer job, it may just be the way my brain works, but that I don't think of that as like a super exciting kind of career. So why do you like your job? I think of software engineers like hunched over a keyboard all day, just eating
Yeah.
their Cheetos or whatever, right? What makes you like it? Why is this a good job to have?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that too because I remember back in college, I remember uh, I feel like I fought that stereotype a lot when people would ask like, "What was your major?" And I said computer science, and they'd be like, "Oh, like computer science, like okay," kind of like there's maybe a stigma there. You're kind of like the guy who hangs out in the basement and doesn't shower and just sits there on his computer, doesn't know how to socialize, super awkward, all those kind of things, and probably is a gamer. I remember someone being shocked that I was not like a gamer,
Uh
one
huh.
time.
Uh huh.
Um, yeah. Anyways, I think I think it's exciting. The reason I got into it in the first place um, was not because I was obsessed with computers necessarily. Is because I like building things.
Okay.
And this is probably also why I kind of steer toward the visual part of software development is because it's fun to build things. It's fun to see it come up on the screen. Um, and I think originally I had a friend who introduced me to programming, and we were making games like these little like flash games, and I said I wasn't a gamer, right? But it's like
Yeah.
I played a couple video games in my in my time, obviously like Age of Empires and things like that, right? Like they're
Mm,
fun. It was like, oh, I could
classic.
exactly. I
Also,
love.
the only video game I ever really liked playing,
Oh,
Age of
really?
Empires 2. Yeah.
Yeah, Age of Empires 2. That's a good one. Yeah. Well, it's like you can play games, that's fun, or you could make games. Like, how cool is that? So I started like getting into that, making like these little like 2D air hockey like game and like
Hmm.
Pong, a little tank game where you can drive around this little tank and like shoot other guys and stuff. Like, and that was fun. And there was a bunch of problem solving with it as well. Like, you actually had to use like math to like figure out, if you shoot a bullet and it has to bounce off this, what at this
Yeah.
angle, where is it going to go next? So there's kind of interesting problems there. And so I started off with that, and then it got to like, I like to write music as well, like piano music and stuff. And I was trying to think of a good way to like promote my music better, and because originally I was like just giving out these like CDs. I'd burn these CDs and give them out to people, and it was like not very good way to share it. And I was like, what if I build a website that can like allow me to share my music, and people can go on there and like listen to it and like leave comments and things like that. And so I think that's how I got into programming, and that's why it's fun, is because it allowed me to like to build things that helped. It was either fun because I'm making a game, or it was useful because I was able to like share my music in a better way. Um, and it's different than like building something that's physical, because which is obviously fun too. But with software, is like, okay, if you make a mistake, like Command Z, like undo it, try this, try
Yeah.
that. Like it's really easy just to like experiment with things, and I found that really fun. You could like get instant feedback, um, and so hopefully that kind of portrays why I found it exciting. Um, and so in my job, like I think there are some software engineers that probably kind of sit hunched over and are like really into programming these like really intense things that are like really low level, like in C. Like what I do is a lot different than that. It feels a lot more, it is visual. It is kind of okay. I want to make this like cool nav bar that does like this cool little effect and this animation, and like that part about it is really fun to me.
Yeah.
Um, so
Cool. So that's great. I can relate with the creative or the being able to create something part of that. And I agree with software. You really can do anything. Um, and I mean, you got to learn the language. You got to figure out how to do it yourself. But anyway, so I've got two questions. The first one is I've heard or I've kind of seen some business videos on YouTube or whatever where a few years ago getting a degree in computer science was like a guarantee. You're gonna always have a job. This is a really good education to get. And then, especially after COVID, where there's a whole bunch of tech layoffs and also a whole bunch of graduates who are like, hey, I get a computer science degree. I was supposed to have a job forever, and then they couldn't find a job. How have you noticed that? How has that kind of shaped your career, or have you noticed it at work?
yeah, good question. I think in technology careers, there are definitely times where the market kind of goes down and up, and it's kind of a roller coaster, I would say sometimes. And it's probably because obviously technology and the tech industry it spans so many different areas of life, and so like depending on where you are, like it could be really good or not so good. And and it definitely has its downturns, and I think right after COVID, there was a huge, like, okay, companies would hire anyone. They're like, we need software engineers, and
Mm-hmm.
in the past couple of years, it's been the opposite, as you're saying, um, where it's a lot harder, I think, to find a job. I think there's all these questions about AI and how that impacts the industry. Um,
That was my
I
next question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big one, big topic for sure. I think that for sure the job market still has a bright future for sure. I'm definitely of the opinion. Like I know you see some of these LinkedIn posts from people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like AI is going to take over. Like all the software engineer jobs are just going to like go away in like 5 years. Like it's going to be insane. Um, you know, drop in people signing up for computer science degrees and trying to get these kind of jobs. I don't think that's true. I know like we're actually encouraged to use AI, especially at Amazon in our work, and to try and make us more efficient. And it can do a lot of cool things. Like it
Yep.
can kind of help mock out things and write some um, code to do this little visual thing and whatever. But overall, like I think the software engineer like brings a lot of the context, and it certainly cannot do everything at all. Like it's not even
Yeah.
close, to be honest.
Yeah.
To be able to just like replace me as an engineer, it's not even close. Um, and as a software engineer, we still need engineers who are able to look and verify, because it's not like we just let the AI go crazy. It's like we have these little AI bots or agents that'll do some things, and then we have to go in there, and I have to basically clean up after it sometimes. Where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that was done wrong. This is not right. Okay, this whole section here, this entire code base, like it doesn't know how to do this thing, so I have to do that part. And so it's a tool, but it's definitely not a replacement. And I don't
Yeah.
see that changing um, soon, just because there is so much context that someone needs to be able to perform their job successfully in this field. And right now, I don't think AI is quite there. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. Um, yeah.
I've so
Mhm.
when I've been using AI at work, uh, because the code or the scripting that I do is very simple, it's database driven. The assistant, we use Databricks, which I think our backend is all in Azure anyway.
Mhm.
But the assistant built in, I'm doing pretty simple data things that are very common, and so I know that the assistant knows the language way better than I ever will. And so being able to just say, hey, write me a block of code that does this thing, boom, it's right, completely right 98% of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it tries to guess what I'm thinking, and sometimes it's very scary because it's like literally reading my mind of what am I going to type next. Other
Huh.
times it's just like extra fluff. No, we don't need all of that
Yeah. Yeah.
extra stuff. What I will say, I just yesterday, maybe it was on yeah, just yesterday, I had this thought like, okay, I need to do a little bit more exercising. I've been busy at work the last few weeks, so rather than YouTube videos for exercise, which I don't really like, I just went to GPT. It was showing me the 4.0 demo, and I said, hey, give me an exercise plan 5 days a week. This is the equipment I have. And it's like, great, here's your exercise plan. And it was looked great. So then I was just like, I wonder how good this has been since the last time I checked. And I said, now let's make it a web app so I can just check off the exercises
Ooh.
as I do it. And it spit it out. And it has an interface where you can test the code in a browser, and it worked. I don't know anything about coding a web app, and here I
Yeah.
have this new original thing, and I'm like, this is great. How do I open it on my phone? And it's like, okay, well, upload it to GitHub. You put this, use this sign in for your free account, and then go to this place on your phone. I haven't set that up yet,
Okay.
but it just amazes me how on the one hand at work I'm way more efficient because instead of going on Stack Exchange or reading documentation to
Hmm.
try and figure out how to make some function work, it's just like, oh, here's your code. And every once in a while it'll miss a closing parentheses or something and you gotta
Yeah.
debug it or whatever. And then at home, it's not like I'm not one of those people who codes for fun after work. But now I could if I wanted to. Anyway, I agree with what you were saying, where this is going to be a great enabler, and just like in college in my engineering classes, I did a lot better once I learned how to use my calculator correctly.
Mm,
I feel like AI is going to be the same way. You
yeah.
still have to understand the basics, and then it's this huge accelerator or enabler to help you do it better and faster. Anyway,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of things like an app like what you were describing. I'm not surprised at all that it could just spit that out. Um,
yeah.
and those kinds of things are a perfect use case for when AI is very useful. Because to be honest, like if I were to ask to make an app like that, I'd be like, okay, it's kind of tedious, because
Uh huh.
it's very basic, right? And it's very like there's nothing crazy about it. And I think once you get into the more nitty gritties and more Like there could be some things, but we'll see where it goes. Like I said, I agree. It is a tool, and in fact, we're not afraid of it. We're embracing it completely, and it does make work more efficient in some aspects. And those parts of work that are really not fun, which is the tedious stuff,
Yeah,
where it's like, okay,
yeah,
I gotta like try and do like like just AI do this part, and I'll work on this other more interesting problem that you can't solve yet. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah. So how well, let's go here first. How what do you make? How tell us about your job and some of the benefits that you get working for Amazon.
sure. Yeah, I think in tech in general, I've been very happy with benefits. Like I think especially as someone you know has a family, have 4 kids, like the benefits we get are incredible. Especially considering the fact that like I didn't have to go. I got a bachelor's degree, right? I didn't have to go get a
Yep.
master's, PhD, go off to some other school. I it was the value you get for in your career in terms of the benefits versus how much schooling you do, I think is incredible. Yeah, at Amazon, it's obviously very competitive. Amazon being a FANG company, um, so I guess in terms of like compensation, I'm happy to give like a range of kind of like what.
Yeah.
So my job title is senior front end engineer, which like I mentioned is in the software engineering family job
Yep.
family. And if you're a senior engineer at Amazon, you would expect, and I'm talking in terms of base salary, stocks, all this together, so that the entire
Okay.
package would probably be like between 300,000 to 450K,
Okay.
somewhere in that range, and that did
Total compensation.
total compensation. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And obviously that I think that can differ a little bit depending on if you're like in the Bay Area or New York. They'll
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
adjust that a little bit, but in general, I think that in that range for sure. Um,
Do you work from home?
I do work from home, and that's actually yeah. There's a whole other story behind that. So Amazon right now, they did embrace remote work for a while, like a lot of companies did, right during COVID and even after the fact. Since then, there's been a big push to return to the office. Um, however, so I actually when I joined Amazon, our family we moved to Seattle area,
Uh huh.
and we were there for a couple years. But when COVID hit, um, we made the decision to move to Utah to be closer to my family, um, and my wife's family as well. A lot of her siblings are also here, and doing that, knowing very well that the rest of my team was still in Seattle, um, and I was able to get since then I was able to get an actual remote exception. So
Okay.
it's like it's indefinite. I got one back when before they had like made this push to like bring people back. So I actually have a remote exception. They're kind of viewed as a very like a it's not very common for people to have those. So I consider it very myself very blessed and lucky
Yeah.
and
Okay.
fortunate to have one of those. Otherwise, we would have had to when they pull people back to the office, we would have had to move our family back to
Yeah.
Seattle, which I probably would not have done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
So
work from home.
that's interesting because my job at Humana now, they fully embrace they were starting to do kind of work from home stuff even before COVID, and now they're like selling off real estate, saying this is working great with people
That's
just
awesome.
working from home.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
as far as I know, that's never going to change. Although I've mentioned this before, even in other videos, that if there was an office that I could go to within 10 or 15 minutes of my house, I think I would prefer that because there's
Oh.
a lot less distraction, and it is nice to be able to work with people face to face when you're all there together.
Hmm.
But I hate commuting so much that it would have to be within like 10 or 15 minutes of my
Right.
house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And you know what? Like I do have the opinion that I think in ideally I would work in the same geographical location as my company. Like they like you said, they'd be maybe 15 minutes away. It'd be great. But I still have the flexibility to be remote. So if I
Yeah.
want to go in, I could. If there's a team event, I can go to that. And honestly, those are really fun. I think there is value in having in-person interaction for offsites and things like that. Um, Me personally, like I found, especially in my career, in as being a software engineer, like absolutely can work remote. It's obviously you spend a lot of time in front of a computer,
Yeah.
and there are meetings, and we can do exactly what we're doing now, right? Like I do this all the time at work. Is there's meetings, you can record them, you can get it, you can have the communication you need to have with other people, and it works great in my opinion. Like I've had no I'm a big fan of the remote work.
Yeah.
Um, I will say it is kind of interesting to see. We made the decision to come to Utah, and it is interesting to see how like I sort of assumed that the remote work would just take off, like it wouldn't go
Uh-huh.
back at all, and
Right.
it's kind of interesting to see it kind of shift back towards like in office work. It makes me um not nervous, but a little more kind of like okay, we'll see how the next job after Amazon, my next step in my career,
Yeah.
how it goes. I'm not really sure how that'll look yet.
That's actually what I was going to ask next is do you feel like this is a pretty stable job? And maybe that's different because you got a remote exception or I don't know. Maybe it's just based on the news of the day. I don't know. What you feel
Yeah,
pretty stable and secure?
yeah. I mean, in terms of job security, I do. I feel like I've established um, uh, a good place for myself here. I've earned trust with my team, and I think I've done a good job at um, front end engineering and helping bring value uh, to the websites we build. So in terms of the job, I feel like I could stay here for a long while. It kind of more depends, I think, on whether I actually want to. Um, and the remote exception definitely changes everything. Like having that in
Yeah.
place is really great. Amazon does compensate very well. So it's kind of a nice thing to have. However, I have toyed with the idea, of thinking about what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Do I
I
and
think
I
everybody does that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and I think continue like the remote work, like that for me is kind of a non-negotiable in a way. Like I want to be able to have that flexibility.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have the company local as well, so I could go, like I said, to the office if I ever wanted to. But Utah is a great place as well for tech. Um, but I definitely would look for kind of remote friendly companies, and I know there's a lot out there. I still see them all over the place. I know a lot of
Yeah.
coworkers that I've had who have left because of the return to office mandate, have been able to find other really awesome jobs that are also remote. So
Right.
I've seen them be that they're out there for sure.
Yeah. I agree. Utah's a good place even for tech. Do you, or I guess what we should say is you make plenty of good money. The benefits are great. Software engineering is not just sitting in the basement eating Cheetos. Uh, what advice would you have for somebody either trying to pivot their career towards software engineering or someone who's just starting out and not sure do I go to college, what should I study, things like that?
Yeah, great question, and I think I touched on this a little bit earlier too. Like I went to college, went to university, went to BYU. Obviously, you were there too. Had a great time,
Yep.
and got my degree, and in computer science. And that is a very good, solid career path. I think there are probably some companies out there that want to see engineers have a degree,
Yep.
especially like a technical one. However, that is not even a requirement. Like I know plenty of people that I've worked with even that never either got their degree in something completely unrelated to technology
Yeah.
or did a boot camp, like went that route. There are plenty of really good what they call boot camps out there that will uh, that are relatively inexpensive compared to a
A 4 year
university.
degree. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Way cheaper than that, and give you a lot of just the very practical skills that you need in the industry. Whereas a degree will go over a lot of theory, a lot of different things like that you don't necessarily use day to day. It still has a lot of good value, but like you can absolutely do a boot camp. Um, And honestly, for me, like they didn't really teach a lot of web development in college. Like a lot of those skills came from me deciding I wanted to do it. Initially when I got into software engineering, I kind of was was doing a lot of web development, and
Yeah.
since then, to kind of build my career and focus on that more, I learned TypeScript and React and some of these other things that college never taught. So, and those things can be learned. I mean, there's a bazillion uh, websites that people have built that will teach you these things, like for like a small subscription fee.
Yeah.
So the information is readily available online if you want to just like jump on there and learn how to build a website. Like there's a lot of places that'll teach you that. A lot of places that'll teach you how to like use JavaScript, TypeScript, React. If you're a lot more serious about it, then a boot camp is a great option. And they really set you up to try and like get a job right out of the boot camp, which I think vary in length, somewhere like 3 months or 6 months or something.
Yeah.
At a degree, if you're gung ho about going and getting a degree, you can absolutely do that. That obviously opened a lot of doors for you, but that's a lot
Yeah.
longer, and it's definitely not required.
Right.
So a lot of options, honestly, and the internet is an amazing source of knowledge that can provide all the information you need to learn these skills. I like what we talked about earlier about the stereotype of you know about what programmers do. I probably didn't really touch too closely on like what I would do on a day to day basis, um, but I definitely I think would want to point out to people who might be interested in becoming a software engineer that being like a superstar coder is obviously a great thing, but like a lot of the really awesome software engineers I've worked with, we're not necessarily like these insanely smart, insanely nerdy
Yep.
uh, people. That they're very normal, they're very well rounded. They had people skills. Like you don't need to be the super genius to get into like the computer tech industry. And I would say your ability to communicate and write, even especially to Amazon, like writing is a big deal. Like be able to communicate an idea and explain like how you'd accomplish it or how you'd solve it is a huge deal. If you're just a superstar coder and you don't know how to work with people, you don't know it's going to be a lot harder to go far in this industry, because honestly, like
Yeah.
some of the biggest problems I deal with are not even technical problems. They're just like how do I work with other people to accomplish this goal, and how do I work with a team, how do I be a tech lead, and how do I communicate priorities with other people. Like that is a huge part of software engineering as well, that I think is underappreciated and not always given the focus it needs. And I think probably a lot of people that I've seen like in college that they're scared because they're like, oh, like computers are programming, like okay, only like really smart people do that. And it's like, well, that's not really the case. Like I think a lot of people, if they gave it a good try, could do it.
Yeah.
And even just that alone, like having these, like I said, these sort of soft skills is just as important, if not more important, than the like technical skills.
That's our conversation. Thanks for watching. It actually turns out that Drew finished his last thought right as the time limit timer hit 1 second. I don't think he could see the clock, but somehow he hit it perfectly. Anyway, thanks for watching to the end. As always, share this with all of your career curious friends, and it really helps the channel when you subscribe and pass the word along.